What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We will have Matt Cassel and Phil Perry. We're also going to have Scott Hanson from NFL Red Zone joining us to talk all things NFL and tell you a little bit about himself, if you like. But with the Patriots continuing their West Coast swing, they have the Raiders this week after their win over the Arizona Cardinals. It's time to focus in on where this 7-6 team is. Mac Jones, been a little lippy the last couple of weeks. Here's what Matthew Slater had to say about Mac and ownership of the team, meaning the players, not Robert Kraft. It's brought to you by Shaw's, perfecting the art of fresh.
I think he continues to find his voice. I think one thing Devin and I do is to encourage him to exercise his voice more. It's sometimes tough when you got a guy like Devin. You kind of feel like you got to defer to him all the time, but I think Devin has really been intentional about, like, hey, this is your team. You need to speak up. You need to take ownership, and I think he's done that. That's tough. I don't care if you're in, who you are. In year two, that's going to be tough, and he's done a really good job of that. So, it's great to see him continue to grow in that role, and I know we look to him for that leadership, and he's done a great job.
With no further ado, let's bring in the boys to talk Patriots-Raiders. All right, here are the boys. It's Cassel. It's Perry. Matt Cassel in the immediate aftermath on Post Game Live. I don't like the emoting toward the sideline. Do you think it's all's well that ends well? Team gets the win, they move on? Or do you think that rancor might still exist this week with Mac Jones and Matt Patricia?
No, I think that after a game, you put your differences aside, and it's an emotional game. Look, coaches get emotional, players get emotional. I've been in battles before on the sideline with my coaches, and it's just part of the game. What I was saying in post-game was just the fact that you don't want to make it something that's routine, that every single week you're screaming at the sideline, you're having this interaction with your coach where you're cussing at him and he's cussing at you or whatever it might be. I just don't think it's a good look for the team. And from a leadership standpoint, look, you're allowed as a quarterback to voice your opinion, to be vocal, to take ownership in this offense, and to be frustrated at times. That's part of this game. That's part of playing your position and being a leader on the team. But I think week in and week out, if those situations are happening and everybody on the offense, everybody on the defense is watching that, I just don't think that can be as productive for you moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you trend away from it being for the good of the team and more feeling like a personal attack, I guess. And regardless, I've said, look, he's entitled to show his emotion. They put him in a bad spot, but it's not going to be productive if it does get to a personal attack. Did that guy just lose the battery?
We lost Phil.
That has to stay on the show.
We lost Phil.
Phil's back. Fell into a swirly black hole. You okay?
I'll be all right. Just internet adventures. You know how those go, but we're internet warriors and we press on.
Phil looks like he's sitting on a couch with the laptop on his knees right now because there's a little wobble to him. Am I accurate?
It's actually we're on the cell phone right now. The laptop is on the fritz.
Oh, it's a good workout for the belt. Phil, you've done a nice job explaining the tenor of the players and what they've been asking for. Here is your assessment of what the players have been requesting from the coaching staff.
I think there also was a breaking point that was reached, and I think it was last week against the Buffalo Bills. And, the sense that I get is that players in that locker room are looking at this and saying, somebody has to be the driver of well-executed football here, and maybe it should be us. And I think that's why you're hearing the things that you heard from the Patriots after that Bills game. I think that's why you're seeing what you're seeing from Mac Jones, because they've approached it one way for a long, long time, and it didn't work. And so now there's not much rope left for somebody like Matt Patricia or Joe Judge when it comes to the sideline operation, and you're seeing these outbursts.
Let's just revisit that quote because it's gotten a lot of traction out here this week. Phil, just to revisit that going into the Cardinals game, the players really wanted to be pushed going into that game and have a different tenor around the team of urgency.
Yeah, I think you heard it from Mac Jones immediately after that Bills game where he said he wants to be coached harder, and he used the word accountability when asked about why the offense maybe was still experiencing some of the struggles that they've been experiencing going all the way back to training camp. And now he took a lot of accountability himself in that response after that Bills game in his press conference. but he mentioned the coaching staff as well. And I think he's speaking for the team a lot of times, Tom, when he is in front of a microphone. I think he takes his leadership role on this team very seriously. This is a guy who was voted as a captain, obviously going into his second year before the season began. And interesting to me to hear Slater and others talk about Mac Jones's leadership even right now. And so I think that is sort of a tacit acknowledgement that they're okay with the way this guy is approaching his job and his role right now, and maybe that even includes some of the emotional stuff we're seeing from him on the field.
It's funny because they absolutely know what the storylines are around the team. They know what we saw. They understand that Mac looking at the sideline and imploring the coaching staff to do a better job for him is real. So it seems as if the players are the drivers in this. Matt, have you ever felt a time, and again, it's Bill Belichick, the greatest that's ever done it. So it seems so contrary to what we would understand to be the case, that Bill Belichick and his staff need to be pushed on the details, need to be pushed to push the players. It's contrary to everything that we've ever imagined and what the national perspective is on Bill, Matt.
Right, and that's the other part to me. Why did it take until week, 15? In order for, if you see this trend going on throughout the early part of the season, as a player, I guess is what I'm saying, and it takes the loss to the Bills to finally say, hey, we want to be pushed harder, we want to be held more accountable. I have to believe that there's accountability taking place in some parts, but I think from a player standpoint, maybe that accountability comes from more leadership, more ownership from everybody. Mac Jones taking more of a vocal role, which you kind of have seen these last few weeks. But I question the fact that now all of a sudden it's week 15, this late in the season, and you're saying, oh, well, we need to be held more accountable by the coaching staff. Why doesn't that happen in week 4, week 5, week 6? I think you know what I mean? It's just interesting.
I think it was. I think they're getting at it a little different way now, Matt. I think, we heard all the way back in September, Mac Jones talking about not at times understanding the purpose of certain play calls. And I think that was, in some ways the initial stages of this. And I think for Mac Jones or for others, there was a stretch of the season where they wanted to give Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, and Bill Belichick the opportunity for them to figure this thing out. But now we're into the final month of the season. They are sniffing the postseason, so it's not like their season's over, but it's desperate times. And maybe for them, desperate times call for desperate measures, and it feels like they needed to make a change in terms of how they're approaching their jobs on the player end so that maybe they get a little bit more out of the coaching staff.
And for them, too, Bill Belichick requested openly of the media and the fan base, hey, this is going to take some time. And it is Bill Belichick. So Mac Jones is going to place all his trust implicitly into Bill Belichick, and the players are going to do the same thing. So if it's not looking good in week 4, they're going to say, well, he knows what he's doing. Why would we say anything? We have to trust him. And that's why I think it's just been a very weird season, because I think in some ways it's not forever forfeiting the trust, because going forward, what happens in 2023, and I do believe Bill Belichick will be here in 2023 with a new plan in place. I think that's going to be the intention of ownership at the end of the year. Hear what he has to say, move forward. But the faith placed in the plan in 2022 has not been rewarded. So maybe now you're at a point, okay, 6-6, we just looked like ass against Buffalo. What are we going to do against Arizona? Not so great. We still win 8-6. So now what happens, Matt, is you move into this game. Look at this matchup. Is this one that the Patriots should be able to secure and move to 8-6?
You know what? I think it's going to be a lot tougher matchup than a lot of people think. They've been in a lot of close games here with the Las Vegas Raiders. You look at them offensively, I think the weak point of their offense is their interior, their offensive line, but they've got an all-pro back there with Josh Jacobs. He leads the NFL with all-purpose yards, over 1,700 yards, 11 touchdowns. They've got Davante Adams out there. There's rumors out there that they might get Darren Waller back, who's been out since October. They might get Hunter Renfrow back, which is another weapon for them. That those three components of their offense haven't been on the field more than like 70 snaps the entire season. So that could create a little something. And they're going to run the rock now. They're going to run the rock because you have to play too high defense a lot of times against a guy like Davante Adams. So it's going to be a challenge for the defense to just step up and stone that run. And then also Davante Adams is another number one wide receiver. For the offensive side of the ball, they're going to have to beat man coverage, and they've got 2 elite pass rusher. Max Crosby, Chandler Jones has come into his own over these last 3 weeks. He kind of went dormant early in the season. Everybody's like, where is Chandler Jones? But you've seen him turn it on. Max Crosby's, I think he's tied for the lead in sacks right now with 14. Yep. He's 3rd in the league in pressures. The guy is a complete player at the defensive end position. He runs with the motor all day long. He's instinctive. He's good in the run game, and he can get after the quarterback. So that's my major concern for this offensive unit is, number one, is can you protect Mac Jones, or is it going to be something where you're going to have to 7-man protect, 8-man protect in order to get those opportunities down the field? Because we talk about taking shots and being more explosive. It's hard to do if you can't block those 2 guys up front. So then the other part about this Patrick Graham defense, I mean, it's very similar to what the Patriots look on the defensive side of the ball. It's a ton of man coverage. They're the 6th most. I mean, the defense runs the 6th most plays of man coverage. So they're going to challenge these wide receivers, and it'll be interesting to see. Is Devontae Parker be able to pass concussion protocol? Will Jacoby Myers be back? Because, again, you have to find guys in this game to be one-on-one.
And, Phil, when we look at that group, as Matt just alluded to, if you don't have Parker to take those downfield shots that we've been begging for, and Myers is either limited or not out there at all, you're going to look at a situation where the Patriots' passing game is going to be challenged from Andre Stevenson, of course, coming back from his knee. It's hope against hope to think that Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong are going to have an explosive game against what's generally a pretty good Raiders defense, or at least a talented one, Phil.
Yeah, well, Tom, the Patriots' passing game won't be challenged because the Patriots' passing game right now is screens. And so they should be able to run their screens. And they'll continue to run their screens. And so that, I think, is unfortunately what you're probably looking at again. And trying to avoid situations like when they ran into on Monday night against the Cardinals, where Hunter Henry is one-on-one trying to block Max Crosby or Chandler Jones, because that happened in Arizona. He gets beat for a quarterback hit that leads to an interception and could be a potentially game-changing play in that kind of situation. So I think, unfortunately for the Patriots, you're probably looking at more of the same, given the defense that they're going to be facing and given the personnel that they'll be dealing with on their own side.
When you look at these two teams, you look at quarterbacks, Derek Carr and Mac Jones, who, if Mac Jones has a really good career, he'll be better than Derek Carr, I think. Better results, maybe, but I still think Derek Carr is better than most people give him credit for. I'm going to ask you guys this question. I'm going to answer it myself first. I would rather have, if you gave me the choice, hey, would you rather have Derek Carr next year playing quarterback for the Patriots, or would you rather have Derek Carr playing for the Patriots instead of Mac Jones on Sunday? I'd still say no. I'd rather have Mac Jones. Like his accuracy, like his composure, like his poise, like his decision-making. I like his pocket presence better, believe it or not. What about you two?
I'd go with Mac Jones in that situation, too. I just feel, especially if you're factoring in salary and things of that nature.
No, just who would you want to be your starter this game and next year?
So Fantasyland. If we're in Fantasyland, I'd still take Mac Jones in that situation. I think because he's already, Matt, to me, he's already shown in his rookie year that he's kind of in that Derek Carr / Kirk Cousins / Matt Ryan middle of the road NFL quarterback territory. And with Mac Jones, at least I think, as opposed to Derek Carr, you still have the unknown in terms of what his ceiling might be, because he's only in year 2, because the offensive situation this year has been strange. So I would take him right now, and I would certainly take him moving forward based on some of the potential.
Right. I mean, if you take age into consideration, then I would absolutely say that. But I agree with what Tom said about Mac Jones and all those things, but you're also describing Derek Carr and his abilities and what he can do. And he's proven over a long period of time that he doesn't get a lot of credit for what he does. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. He takes care of the football, even though the last 3 weeks, I know people are going to say, well, he threw 5 interceptions in the last 3 weeks. That's not a good job of taking care of the football. But I think this guy has had to maneuver throughout his career through a lot of different offensive coordinators, a lot of different head coaches, and he's been the one guy that's been the stable part of that offensive unit for them. And I also think that there's been years where, he's had remarkable years where he's thrown for over 4,000 yards and he's accurate. And I think he plays really tough in the pocket with an offensive line that's not always very great. So I'm going to go with Derek Carr in this situation for his experience, because of what he's shown on the film. And right now, there are still a lot of question marks with Mac Jones. I'm sorry, there are. And you can't say there isn't until you're able to evaluate this guy in different circumstances. We saw, glimpses of it last year, and it wasn't throughout the entire course of the year. We also saw him against really good teams and those question marks arose. And throughout the course of this season, it hasn't been one of those things that's a finished product because of maybe personnel, because of coaching. But at the end of the day, Derek Carr's been through a lot of those same coaching changes, a lot of those same ebbs and flows, different coordinators, even what he went through last year in his leadership. I've got a lot of respect for Derek Carr and what he's accomplished throughout his career.
Last question, then we're going to bring in Scott Hanson from the NFL Red Zone. He's going to talk to us about all things NFL, but this is another Fantasyland question. I'm going to take Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes off the table. You can't use them. Who would be having a better year under center for the Patriots than Mac Jones is having now? I'm not saying nobody would, but let's go with some options. Tua, nope. Would still look like ass. Geno Smith, ass. Russell Wilson would still look horrendous. Brady would still look pretty bad. Maybe Deshaun Watson. You guys take a shot at it. Who else? Who would you say right now would be extracting more wins from the Patriots as they stand right now? Matt?
I think. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I think that it would have to be a quarterback that offers something, a different skill set from what Mac Jones does, because right now you can see that they're very limited in terms of what their boot game is, the zone reads. And actually, when I say zone reads, I mean actually being able to take the ball and run the football.
Okay, so Jalen Hurts.
Of course, Jalen Hurts, any of these guys that show some ability in order to get outside the pocket and create with their legs, as well as get outside it in terms of pocket movements, because when you're a pure pocket passer, and which Mac Jones really is, and he's shown mobility, don't get me wrong, I think he's got the opportunity to get out and create secondary plays off platform and stuff like that. But again, it's the other component that you'd have to add something different, another element to this offensive unit that they don't have right now.
He's not going to be a 12 for 65 on the ground guy in any game, which a Jalen Hurts could do, right, Phil?
Sure. And so you'd include Lamar Jackson in that sort of scenario as well. And then I wouldn't have to look all that far. You've seen an AFC West team this week with the Raiders stay in the AFC West and go with Justin Herbert, who's a guy who's incredibly mobile, has all kinds of size and all kinds of arm strength as well. And I think in a lot of different systems, he's already been really efficient and really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's some different offenses. You'd see even more from Justin Herbert. He's that physically gifted. And then how about the quarterback? How about the quarterback the Patriots are going to see next week?
That's who. Joe Burrow. I don't know. It would be a jailbreak, but Joe Burrow was dealing with jailbreaks last year as well. But he had Jamar Chase to throw to. He had the tight end whose name is escaping me.
T. Higgins.
Thank you.
Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, every one of those.
So you put Joe Burrow here with horrible protection and a screen game because you don't have the opportunity to throw downfield. How would Joe Burrow look here? Appreciably better than Mac Jones?
That's a fair point. I think one thing that Burrow's done well is because, as you mentioned, Tom, he has been pressured relentlessly really since the start of his career. And yet he still looks like somebody who does a pretty good job of navigating the pocket and being able to extend plays. He's not a great athlete, and I think athletically he and Mac Jones are actually pretty comparable. I don't think people are willing to give Mac Jones that kind of credit, but he can move. He's just not, I don't think, quite the same mover. It's a little different style with Burrow, and Burrow feels like he's a little bit more comfortable in sort of those extended play situations.
What about Baker Mayfield?
That's going to be a no for me, dog.
He does move better than Mac.
He does move better. But,
stronger arm than Mac.
I mean, last year, it's interesting because we had this conversation when these two teams played last year, the Cleveland Browns against the Patriots, and the conversation in pregame live was legitimately, who would you take right now? Would it be Baker Mayfield or Mac? And we all, maybe other than one person, picked Baker Mayfield. So I'm just saying it's an interesting conversation to now revisit it, and especially off Baker Mayfield coming off that performance on Thursday night on, a day and a half of get in the building. It's just these questions, these hypotheticals, and these, in a perfect world, what would happen? I mean, you could go round and round and round in these conversations, but at the end of the day, they are who they are, and the team is what it is, and we've got to figure that out. Okay, Tommy?
We're going to re-rack that conversation. Can we re-rack that conversation at some point in time here? Because I am 99.9% sure I did not take Baker Mayfield in that situation. I'm pretty sure whatever end of the spectrum Cassel was on in a quarterback.
Maybe I did. Maybe I did.
I was on the other end.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was last year. He was coming off of 2020, having the best year of his career, going to the playoffs, leading his team. We're getting the first playoff win since 1994. So of course I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, look at this. He's on the upswing, and then shoulder surgery and gets ships out of town, and that's all she wrote for Baker Mayfield. But I think going to make a resurrection.
Over the course of time, I find every time I speak to people in organizations, whether it be coaches, general managers, or people higher up than that, they have the exact same hypothetical conversations and wonderments that we do. They all do. That's what's interesting. But the Patriots are tethered to Mac Jones. But the question is, as we talk about the talent level as it is, and the array of players that they have, and we conclude that the best guys to have under center right now might be guys who can move a little bit or move a ton, you wonder if the Patriots say to themselves, damn, we need a dual threat guy. But that's not for now. That's for later, as Matt Cassel pointed out. Guys, great stuff. We're going to bring in Scott Hanson. We got to get moving on. Make sure you join us for pregame live, noontime on Sunday. And there he is, as advertised, America's favorite Sunday house guest, Scott Hanson. Can you believe since 2009, the number of Sundays, the number of hours that you have shared in people's homes? Think about that.
It is. It's crazy. Well, we're here in December. Tom, I get Christmas cards from people that I don't know. And like the dad or the mom, whoever's writing the card says, little Jimmy, we were finishing Christmas cards and we said, well, I think that's everybody. And little Jimmy says, well, why don't we send one to Scott Hanson? And they're like, well, why? And they're like, well, we spend every Sunday with him. And it blows my mind, But,
the way you do it is so enthusiastic, attached, conversational. And the cool thing about the way you do it, too, is in the real-time action of it, you sound like you have the clicker or you're talking to somebody who has the clicker. Let's go quad box. And you're just excited to go quad box. It's infectious.
People make fun of that. But well, you've known me since before Red Zone even started, and this is season 14. I love the game, man. I love the game. And beyond that, hopefully I've grown as a broadcaster to where I love the audience. I love serving.
That's what I mean.
And so, Tom, every time I cut or our team cuts to a different game, someone is living and dying by whatever they're going to see in the next 60 seconds. And so I always want to maintain that passion and that enthusiasm, bringing it right back into their living rooms for the most followed sport in our country.
The great thing is just the tone of, hey, look at this, that is constant and not affected in any way. Just a great friend to, your Q rating has to be through the roof. You're a sex symbol too, I would imagine, at this juncture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, most definitely. You can tell by the way I dress. 100%. I'm on the way to the gym after this, so it's down and dirty, just gray T-shirt time. But yeah, you know what? I'm very, very blessed. I love it that people have a response that is 90-something% positive. And in today's world, whether that's social media or face-to-face, having that type of a good response is gold. It's rare, and I cherish it. I really do.
That's what happens when you're ruggedly handsome. Listen to me. What is the outside perspective on the Patriots? I know that you don't often engage a ton in the analysis and the opinion rendering because that's not your job on that Sunday, but nobody knows the NFL and watches more plays and is more attuned to what the ways and means of each team is than you. What's your perspective on where the Patriots are in 2022 as we reach Week 14?
Yeah, I don't think, and I'm going to speak from what I perceive as the national perspective. This is not just Scott Hanson's opinion, but from the way I do see the 10,000-foot view of the NFL, I don't think the nation looks at the Patriots like they're a team you don't want to play if they happen to get in, right? There are teams right now that obviously there's the elite teams, and I think there's probably 4, maybe 5 elite teams that are who they are. And then there's teams where it's like, okay, this team's going to get in the playoffs, but they look like they're a one and done. And then there's teams that's like, this team might get into the playoffs, and if they do, you don't want to see them right now.
Yeah, frisky.
That if they get into the playoffs, people are like, I wouldn't mind a matchup. I wouldn't mind the Patriots coming into, our stadium and whatnot. And I think that's where the Patriots are right now.
They're not plucky. They're not frisky. They're not the team you don't want to draw. That would be like the Lions. They'll be even the Raiders.
That's one of the teams I was thinking of right there, is if the Lions somehow, after a 1-6 start, happen to cobble together enough wins to get in, I don't think people want to see the Lions right now. I would even say, look, and I know Dallas totally spit the bit against the one-win Texans this last Sunday, but assuming the Eagles win that division, the Cowboys are going to be on the road, and people don't want to see the Cowboys coming into their place. I don't think. I don't think this Patriots squad instills that type of fear. And I think it's probably from lack of offensive skill position players, especially if this Ramondre Stevenson injury is anything substantial, which I haven't actually heard the latest. I haven't heard a practice report or anything today, but
they're just getting going. Because they're out west and we're doing this on Wednesday to get ahead of the game. We haven't heard yet, but he indicated when he was leaving the locker room, he was confident that he'd be back there. But between Devontae Parker and Jacoby Myers, and just really the screen fest that this offense has turned into, we look at the decisions of Bill Belichick post-McDaniels to just say, how about I just put something together and Frankenstein it up with the things I got laying around the house here? And it hasn't worked. And Bill's unassailable record post-Brady is getting more and more assailed, especially locally, where we watch it week in and week out. Are you surprised at the vibe that emanates from New England, being somebody who has got connections here?
Well, you just called it a screen fest. I am surprised at that. You've got a second-year quarterback who hasn't exactly demonstrated himself to be a Pro Bowl level. He was quite good, if not very good, as a rookie last year. But Mac Jones, his play, and granted the whole offense's play, has definitely, it seems to have either plateaued or even maybe flatlined at sometimes. For him to be screaming about decisions that are made in real time during the game, Brady does it. It's a different thing. There's pelts on the wall that give him that leverage. For Mac Jones to be screaming at it, and for us to have seen it now multiple times live in game, there's got to be issues there. There has to be. And I know that there was another cutaway of Patricia and Jones hugging it out. I believe it was shortly after there or whatever. But yeah, you don't have the yardage and the points production that would lead you to believe that any infighting that we have is just us trying to extend that already great level of play one step further to become a legitimate contender. It's like, no, it feels like, we're treading water here, and Mac Jones feels like it's sinking, and he thinks he knows where the origination of that, the problems are, and so he's barking at the sidelines, national TV cameras be danged. So, there's something going on there that's not right. And of course, nothing's ever going to come out into the media about it, or it would be a shock if it did, just because Bill Belichick obviously has had, he's got the sign on the door that, what stays on in that, what goes on in that locker room stays there. But on game day in real time, cameras are going to catch those things. There's something going on there. And I just didn't think Mac Jones was that type of guy. I think, and I'm not blaming Mac Jones. I'm just saying, how much worse must it be if this has taken this guy, Mac Jones, to this level of screaming?
Do you see the frustration? Yeah, absolutely. And the frustration is very real. And I think it's in part because it's gone on since the spring. It was a dubious decision to begin with, but players like Mac Jones swallowed hard and said, I'll go along with it. And then as summer progressed and there was no traction, it was, it might take, and Bill said this, it might take 5, 6, 7 weeks, a couple months to get this right. Never really asking for that time at the beginnings of seasons before. I mean, he'd mentioned that nobody knows who a team is until, after October, but this was more or less saying it's going to take a while. So the players extended their patience, and then to have it not look any better, all the defenses are improving, all the other teams are improving, and you're walking out on the field, Scott, and you don't have a shot, and they're not helping you. I think that's what's leading to the actor screaming at the director, what's my line here?
That's a good way of putting it. And I think because if they were able to get that right, this actually could be a team that could be dangerous into January. I like the defense well enough, and Belichick is still, he's still got the defensive mind to put things together. Matthew Judon's having another Pro Bowl type season, and there's some other good pass rushers in there. I mean, Josh Uche has come on really strong as well. If this can be a team that can put up 27 points a game, maybe not even, but be a consistent threat to move the ball, control the ball, and score it when they have to. It's be a legitimate team. And they still might end up being a playoff team. I just don't see them being anything that can get past, maybe not past wild card round, and I would think certainly not past the division.
Fast fact before we move on to the Raiders. Check this out. How many games this season have the Patriots scored more than 2 offensive touchdowns?
Oh, well, that's a good one. Well, points per game isn't that much, but that's a different way of putting their scoring output. I mean, how many have they scored 3 or more offensive touchdowns? I'm going to guess low, and I'll say 4. Oh, good night. That's perfect.
It's 2. Yep, they did it against the Ravens. They scored 3, and they did it against the Browns when they scored 5 offensive touchdowns. It's staggering. Yeah. What about the Raiders? Speaking of staggered, I don't know of any team that has been more snake bit and haunted in the witching hour than the Las Vegas Raiders. What do you make of them?
Just crazy. I actually was so obviously I'm working on Sundays, but Thursday night football, if there's a game locally, I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles, I can check it out. And I was actually at the Rams-Raiders game at SoFi Stadium. And I'm sure it translated on TV well that stadium was 65% or more Raiders fans, leading pretty much the entire way against a quarterback that had just been Amazon primed to the roster of the Rams, and then they go on the 98-yard drive. It was unspeakable. I mean, it actually made my heart race a little bit, which admittedly that's not a high threshold. I get excited pretty easily.
You do. You're an excitable boy.
Well, I am, but I don't care if it's 2 non-playoff teams, a game-winning touchdown with less than 10 seconds left to go for a quarterback who didn't even – I guarantee you if I asked Baker Mayfield after the game, name all the players you completed a pass to. He couldn't have done it.
100%.
And they go out there and do that, and then that speaks to this is the 2022 Raiders, unfortunately, who I think – I'm a Derek Carr guy. I like Carr. I think you can win with Carr. Devontae Adams is one of the best wide receivers in the game and has been. Josh Jacobs had come on in the last month of the season and looked like not only a solid back, but maybe one of the top 5 backs in the NFL. Their defense is funny. Max Crosby can get after the passer, but the rest of them, they cannot create pressure. Chandler Jones has been on a milk carton this year. They can't get pressure on the quarterback. They can't turn the ball over. I think they're the worst turnover team in the NFL in terms of forcing turnovers. And then Josh McDaniels hasn't been 100% clean in game management either. So, yeah, the Raiders, they're a mess right now, but they're still capable, and that's what makes it double frustrating for Raider fans.
And the NFL flexed the Patriots and Raiders, which, you got, the mentor against student game against, with 2 teams that have a litany of history. And they got flexed out for Commanders-Giants. Yeah. Dan Snyder's team against Dan Jones. I mean, what are we doing? But to me, give me a quick synopsis. What do you think happens between these 2 teams that are bobbing on the waves of mediocrity at best?
I think that New England can – I go back to pressure. I mean, scoring the football is one thing, but creating pressure on defense leads to mistakes, leads to 3rd and longs, leads to, turnovers. And I think New England will be able to put more pressure on Carr than the Raiders will be able to on Mac Jones. So I would give New England the advantage in this. But, of course, hey, a win's a win in the NFL. But, yeah, this Raiders bunch is not quite ready for for prime time. By the way, how'd you like to be? I know we're speaking to a New England audience here. How'd you like to be a Raiders fan? They've had the season they've had with blowing 17+ point leads or 14+ point leads, and now these 2 weeks, Tom, back to back. They've had a haunted season, but these 2 weeks back to back, this game here, they relive two of the worst heartbreaking losses in franchise history, right? Rematch of the Tuck Rule game this weekend. And I don't know if you probably don't know, but next week, the Raiders play the Steelers on the exact 50th anniversary
of the Frenchie Fuqua Immaculate Reception.
The Immaculate Reception. So back-to-back weeks, the season that the Raiders fans have already had has been heart-wrenching. And then they get to relive, because, the national TV broadcast will show Tuck Rule footage as much as they can. And then 2 weeks from now, how many times will the angle of, I think it's like this, where the football comes down. Well, you can see right there. He's got a football right next to him, actually scooped it or not. So, yeah, the Raiders fans, man, it's going to be ugly for the next 2 weeks.
Think about this, too. I mean, the Raiders' losses this year are absolutely epic. Losing to Jeff Saturday 5 minutes after he got there, losing to Baker Mayfield 3 minutes after he got there, getting blanked with that litany of talent by the Saints, losing to the Jaguars. I mean, they're mind-blowing losses to me. They're kind of blow a hole in the side of the battleship kind of losses. Yeah. Who's the NFL MVP to you right now?
I'll go Jalen Hurts. I mean, look, it's going to be a quarterback.
I like it.
Know that. And Hurts, he's playing the most important position on the field for the number one team in the NFL right now. And then people might debate that. Some people might want to take the Bills or the Chiefs and put them number one in their power rankings or whatever. That's fine. But the Eagles have the best record in football. They look like they're going to have home field throughout the NFC playoffs. The second best record in the NFC is still the Minnesota Vikings, and they certainly don't frighten anyone. Right. So I think Jalen Hurts, with the dual threat nature of his game, and especially with his legs opening up the rest of the running lanes for Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott when he touches the ball and everything else, has changed that team. He hasn't had one misstep in the locker room, it would appear, or certainly in the news conference. He's speaking in a very tough media market in Philadelphia. He says the right things. You can just see why guys would want to follow him. And one of the things I actually love about this Eagles bunch and Hurts' game in particular, I'm going to tell you the most unstoppable play in the NFL right now is that Jalen Hurts quarterback sneak, where they line up the two running backs right behind him, literally just to grab a thigh, grab a cheek, and push forward, and then his 700-pound squat thigh strength, it's unstoppable. I don't think I've seen them get stopped on a 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 when they've run that play. So all those things put together, and then the high-flying, the high-scoring offense that they have, give me Jalen Hurts as my MVP right now.
Coach of the Year, Sirianni as well. Could it be a sweep there? Or would it have to be a Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel consideration?
Yeah, well, we thought we were going to have like a New York race.
No, I forgot about Brian.
Coach of the Year. Dayball had, but both New York teams are fading right now. I still think Saleh's done an amazing job. That defense is legit. They've had their quarterback issues for the Jets, so you could probably put him in there. But yeah, why not Sirianni? Remember, Sirianni was a year removed from making that strange, at least it came across as strange to many of us, comment about we're watering flowers right now.
Yeah,
remember that? Remember that?
I do.
At the news conference?
The Patriots had a joint practice with the Eagles last year, and I went there, and I thought the Eagles looked disorganized. I thought and then I saw that they only spend about an hour and 15 minutes on the practice field. And, you get attuned to watching these teams in joint practices. I remember seeing the Patriots in 2014 go to see the Washingtons. And when we were there, I'm like, these guys are disorganized. They wander out when they want to. They wander off the field when they want to. And the Patriots were like, the Red Army. And I was like, I don't think these guys are going to. And then it shows you cannot judge a Mike McDaniel or a Nick Sirianni or the things are out the window that perhaps even and I don't think I'm an old guy, but that I would apply 15 years ago as the measures of what makes a good or great team because, they button their collar all the way up to the top.
Funny you mentioned Mike McDaniel. Can I tell you a quick little anecdote about something kind of dovetails?
Please.
I went down, all of us at NFL Media get dispersed across the NFL map at the beginning of training camp. The NFL's been trying to make like the first Saturday of training camp when all 32 teams are on the practice field at the same time, trying to make that the next event on the calendar. Like schedule release has become an event on the calendar. They want the beginning of training camp. So my assignment was to head down to South Florida, go see all the speed that they had put together on that offense, the referendum year on Tua Tagovailoa. So I'm down there. I was with Willie McGinnis, obviously a New England favorite, my NFL media colleague, and him and I are on the sidelines. And the Dolphins were going through their beginning practice. And I'm like, okay, Mike McDaniel, this guy's kind of interesting, even maybe a little quirky in his news conference. First year of being a head coach, not a long track record as an assistant or a coordinator in the NFL. What's he going to be like? And then what type of command does he respect? Then you've got a guy like Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, who comes over, gets the huge mega $1 million contract. So this practice is about to begin. They're doing their, hamstring stretches and whatnot. Tyreek Hill is going down and he's got an Apple Watch on. Mm-hmm. And literally he's not just like checking some score or something like that or checking the, he was texting people during the beginning of the practice on his watch. And I kept looking at him. I'm like, bro, what? Okay. Did they just let him do this? Is this like, did they see like what not? And I'm like thinking, anyway, I might be an old man too, where I'm like, practice is practice. Let's everyone rocking and focus in. But no one can say that Tyreek Hill hasn't been completely locked in through the season and been paying huge dividends for them. So yeah, some of the new school, old school stuff, whatever wins is, it's right. If you win, whatever you did was great. If you lose, you could have done the same exact thing and it stinks and you don't know what you're doing. So yeah.
And that's why you watch the Patriots, to circle it back, it would be anathema for any Patriot to wave at the sideline and say, shut the bleep up, or scream an F-bomb, especially somebody who doesn't have 6 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And is 36 years old. This guy's 24, but I don't think he's going to get the scalded puppy treatment that a lot of other players would, because A, he's kind of got a point, and B, it's, even though Bill is Bill, and it's always going to be that way, he has hung them out to dry with his decisions this year. And if you betray the faith of the players and ask them to do things that don't make sense, and they willfully say, all right, we're going to do it, and then it doesn't work, they're going to say.
Look at Bill, you know him way longer than I have, but we both have covered him for a long time. We both know him really well. He will do some things because, I don't want to say to spite the media. I mean, that probably is accurate, but I think sometimes he feels like some of us in the media and maybe the fan base in general isn't worthy of him opening up his mind to give all the details of why he's doing what he's doing. Right? Just like, if I'm a chef that wants to prepare things in my kitchen, just enjoy the meal, people. Don't come back there and ask me about how much paprika and stuff.
It's very much Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men. You want me on that wall, don't ask.
Okay, but so that being said, he will do that. He will, has that disconnect, right? But we all know that he does stuff first and foremost because he wants to win football games. He knows what it takes to win football games. And he's made this decision, and it's been an ongoing decision with the offense, right? Yep. Could have taken a different tack at any given point. And here's where they're at. Now, did he answer? I don't see every post-game news conference. I see every snap of every game, basically, but I don't see every post-game news conference. Was he asked about the second blow-up here, or the barking to the sidelines with Mac Jones and Patricia, and what was his go-to line? I'm not addressing that, or we're not talking about that?
No, he was asked in the context on WEEI about it and saying, Mac seemed irate about, the plays not getting in on time. So he was immediately afforded the opportunity to say,
and he just shut it down. And
we all want to. we all want the plays to get in on time. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it goes back to your point, is he getting tapped on the shoulder, called into the principal, Mac Jones, getting called into the principal's office saying, hey, we don't need any of that. You know what I'm saying? Right. We don't need any of that. During the game.
The thing is, you know, and that's the interesting thing. I think players are more tuned to the business aspect on their own end, and certainly their camps are, and their camps get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the camps are saying, look, man, this is your second year. You're a first-round pick. You should be able to leverage this so that your third year, they're definitely going to pick up your fifth-year option at the end of that year, the same way Kyler Murray needed it, so that you get that $150 million contract. I'm not saying that's what's going on, but if you're Mac Jones' camp and family, the arc of his career should not have gone like this to this, and that's what it's done. It should have maybe gone like that. But be that as it may. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to answer that. Who is it? Micah?
Let's go Micah Parsons. Sure. He could do everything. Edge rusher, a threat, a walking turnover machine, but he can play. He can drop back. He can play regular linebacker too. Dude's amazing.
Now it's time for irrelevant questions.
Let's go.
Okay, and this is kind of speedy. We keep
calling me Mr. Irrelevant.
You could have been. But instead, Scott Hanson, you were honored in 1992 by the Syracuse football program with what honor, and how much did it mean to you?
I was the defensive scout team player of the year in my junior year, in my junior season, from the coaching staff, which included a graduate assistant by the name of Scott Pioli, who needs no further introduction to this audience here. And it meant the world to me. I was a walk-on scrub. I was like a Division III talent-wise, Division III player talent-wise, but I knew I wanted to become a sports broadcaster. Syracuse is the best program in the country for my money, for my parents' money. And I walked on the team because I loved the game and I wanted to see if I could get a few more years out of it. Played 4 years there, never made it as a player on game day, but no one tried harder on the scout team than I did, and the coaches acknowledged me and gave me that honor, and it's still one of the best football honors I've ever had.
And for those of you who might be a little bit younger than us, and there's more and more of you out there every day, the early 90s Syracuse Orangemen were a WAGON wagon with the freeze option and Donovan McNabb and Marvin Harrison.
100%. We finished.
What was the guy's name with the double name? Kirby Dardar.
Kirby Dardar, Tampa, Florida, was his hometown. We gave Kirby Dardar a opening kickoff reverse. It was 2 top 10 teams. We played the Florida
Fiesta
he did that too, but there was a Florida regular season game. The Florida Gators, pretty sure it was Spurrier, came into the Carrier Dome. It was called the Carrier Dome at the time. We gave them an opening kickoff reverse, and I remember Paul Pasqualoni, our head coach, told us in the pregame locker room before we came out of the tunnel, he says, we're going to run the reverse on the opening kickoff. If we get the coin flip, we're taking the ball, running the reverse. Kirby, do you prefer to run it to the left or run it to the right? He says, I don't care left or right. I want to run it whichever direction is right up their bench, because he got a scholarship by the Florida Gators. He was from Tampa, Florida, and he did exactly that. He had 4.3 speed, ran it back like 90 yards or whatever it was, opening kickoff touchdown, and we went and routed them. Shane Matthews, Eric Rett were on that team. For the old heads in there, yeah.
That's great. Eric, Ericht, Rett. Listen to me. What was the most amazing play you saw by a Marvin Harrison or a Donovan McNabb playing scout team?
So, funny thing was, I would play on the scout team. I'd play defense and I'd play offense. Wherever they needed a better look, I would just be like, put me in. So by my senior year, I was actually playing some wide receiver on the scout team, and a skinny little kid out of Philadelphia was on the other side named Marvin Harrison, and we would have certain alignments where it would be Marvin Harrison and Scott Hanson as the 2 wide receivers in a set on the scout team giving a look. The best thing I ever saw Marvin Harrison do, who obviously went on to be one of the greatest wide receivers in the history of the NFL, it wasn't on the football field. It was in the spring. We played pickup basketball just to stay in shape. We loved hoops and whatnot.
Yep.
I was the point guard. And Tom, so if I'm the point guard and I'm facing the bucket, I'm at the top of the key, right? I'm dribbling. Marvin Harrison was over here on the right baseline, and he was open, and I hit him with a pass down to the baseline. He took one dribble, went underneath the hoop, and then did a reverse layup. And it was one of those deals where anyone who has a cat, a house cat, sometimes that cat will be totally still, and then they will move, and they move in a speed that you're like, where did that come from? I had never seen a human being move so fast in my life than Marvin Harrison. When I hit him with this pass, I was like, did he just do that? Did I just black out for a second? And he was on the other side of the rim, and I thought, this kid's got some quicks that people aren't going to be ready for. And then, of course, the rest was history. He was unbelievable. And his son now is one of, if not the best wide receiver in college football, and will be a great pro.
Next irrelevant question I have for you is, what are you reading right now? Well, most recent, if that's putting you on the spot too much.
No, well, these are my notes. These are my research notes from last week on Red Zone, but that's too boring. You want something more personal. There's a book. I got it out right here. This is going to be way too wonky. You're gonna regret it.
No.
Question. It's called Hidden in Plain View. It is written by an author named Lydia McGrew, and it is. This sounds weird. So I'm a Christian, and part of my Christian faith is reading and going through Scripture. But I fancy myself as a bit of an intellectual, and I need to reprove my faith all the time. I'm like, I want to know if this is really grounded in fact. It's not just faith, but there are factual things that I can go to. So Lydia McGrew wrote this book about unintended coincidences within Scripture, within the Bible, meaning you can read in the book of Acts that someone says something in this book here, and the book of Matthew is a completely different author, and yet that person said something that coincided, and it wasn't like we're trying to be like an aha, we got it, but it looks like that the people who wrote Scripture were actually eyewitnesses to the events, as opposed to, of course, the atheist or agnostic view, which would be that the Bible was written, way, way later by people that weren't there, and people that hadn't talked to eyewitnesses and whatnot. It's a fascinating book. It's I would not just recommend it patently to anyone, because it's very academic, but I kind of nerd out on that stuff.
I'm reading this.
But you didn't expect that.
No, I didn't. I expected anything at all. I knew that you were a reader, and I would imagine that your bookshelf is fascinating as hell. Really, I do. I love that stuff. I'm reading Caesar right now.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Wait, biography about Caesar?
Biography, a detailed one. The author is Freeman. Anyway, I don't want to go too far afield. These are your irrelevant questions. And the last question is, and the one everyone wants to know the answer to, is we just passed the 5-year anniversary of a monumental time in your career. In December of 2017, you took a bathroom break?
I know. Can you believe it?
We're getting up there. Have you had to make them more frequent?
No, I have not. And everyone is convinced. Because do you know how old I am?
51?
I am 51 years old. And
Wikipedia don't lie.
Even the commissioner, the inimitable Roger Goodell, told me one time, he's like, Scott, is it true that you don't take a bathroom break during Red Zone? I'm like, that's right, Roger. I don't. I don't want to miss any touchdowns. I could take a break, but I don't want to be away from the television. I literally am glued to the TV. And he goes, when you get to be my age, you're not going to be able to do that. And I looked back, I said, well, Commish, hopefully by the time I get to your age, medical science will have caught up with male physiology, if you know what I'm saying, and that there might be some magical abilities or whatnot. But the reality is, I have my fantasy football team's name is the Iron Bladders. First place playoff bound Iron Bladders, by the way. And I'm conditioned, man. I'm conditioned. In fact, not only do I not go during the show, at the end of the show, when we run the touchdown montage, right, the music video recap of 60 touchdowns or whatever you just watched, I don't take off my microphone and my earpiece and run to the men's room. I can drive all the way back here at home, put on Sunday Night Football on my TV, grab a drink, grab some food, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I guess I got to go to the bathroom, and then I'll go use the facilities. It's crazy, man. I'm adjusting.
But the funny thing is as the day goes along, you can see the whites of your eyes starting to turn more and more yellow. Last question. This is the question that I wanted to ask. I forgot to ask. the three most famous people who've recognized you and told you they appreciate your work. Excise Roger Goodell.
Okay. Not to my face, but he actually did it on the Tonight Show. Is it, this is terrible, I might forget his first name. Parsons, the actor who was on The Big Bang Theory. Is it Jim Parsons? I believe
Alan Parsons.
Huh?
Alan Parsons.
Alan Parsons? Okay.
No, it's the Alan Parsons.
Alan Parsons Project. I think it's I don't know. You know, who played the uber nerd on Big Bang Theory, right? Yeah. Which was the #1 TV show in the country for a number of years. He's apparently a big fantasy football player, and this was back when I think Leno was still doing the Tonight Show. Leno's like, "Oh, really? Okay, you're into fantasy football." He's like, "Yeah," and I watched this Red Zone, and it's amazing and whatnot. My mom is a huge Big Bang Theory fan, and she happened to be watching when Parsons was on. I'm pretty sure it's Jim Parsons. And she goes, "Scott, you're not going to believe it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, Mom, a lot of people watch it." But she thought that like legitimized my career because one of her favorite actors said, so that's one. I've been told we've been on in the White House, in both sides of the aisle administration, if you know what I'm saying. I believe former President Obama and former President Trump both had checked it out at times. But then really the unifier. Yeah, exactly. Both sides of the aisle, baby. And I'm an apolitical creature in real life, so that's fine by me. But the coup de grace is this, and this one kind of got me, is during the Super Bowl, when we do Super Bowl opening night, used to be called Media Day, as you well know. Now it's an event that the NFL has created. Yeah. Prime time on Monday before the Super Bowl. Both teams fly into the site of the Super Bowl, and then they have their media sessions, right? In between the AFC team doing their media hour and the NFC team doing their media hour, they have what they call a unity moment. They bring out the Vince Lombardi trophy, and they have the captains from the AFC and the captains from the NFC team go out there, shake hands, photo op, right? Well, the NFL has asked me to host that at different times. Yep. So
you do a nice job, too.
The Super Bowl was, I think it may have been Patriots-Falcons. It was one of the Patriots Super Bowls. Yep. And I'm out there and I'm like, well, there it is, the Vince Lombardi trophy, blah, 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 blah. And here's the AFC captains, the NFC captains, gentlemen, handshakes. The next time these two teams are in the same building, it'll be Super Bowl Sunday and they'll be in front of 100 million people watching on TV. That, the whole Scott Hanson.
Yeah. That was pretty good.
We finished the moment. They go to a commercial break on the television broadcast of opening night, and the stage lights go dim and the players exit the stage. So we're all scrambling, stuff like this. I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around. It's Tom Brady. And I'm like, "Hey, Tom." He's like, "Scott, I just want to say you do an amazing job on Red Zone." And I was like, "Dude, thanks. You're really good at your job too." I'm like, I've been a fan of Brady's. I love excellence. I've been a fan of Brady's forever. But I thought, wow, he's watching. I'm thinking in my head, when does he have to? I'm like, okay, Thursday night football when they're playing, Monday night football, the bye week.
He said it one time. He actually mentioned it in the press conference when he was here. He's like, "This Red Zone stuff is amazing."
Yeah.
He said it on one of the days that they had not played on a Sunday, and someone asked him how it was going. He's, "Oh, this Red Zone is amazing."
And that just goes to show he's a legitimate football junkie, not just himself and his team wanting to win. And by the way, last thing, I'm sorry for such a long answer.
No, this has been awesome.
His heir apparent now is apparently hooked to Red Zone, and I don't mean Mac Jones, although he probably watches, but Josh Allen has gone on record 2 or 3 times this year saying, "Oh yeah, I love Red Zone. I can't wait to watch it on the bye week. I'm watching Red Zone." And, although he called me Chris Hanson, and we had to straighten that.
No, he did not.
Yeah, we had to straighten that out with him.
Have a seat.
Yeah, Peyton Manning called me Chris Hanson one time on a live interview like this, like a satellite interview. And I was like, "Well, Peyton, I'm Scott Hanson. You don't want Chris Hanson interviewing you on live television." The To Catch a Predator guy, for those who don't know or don't remember. So yeah, we had a good laugh at that one.
Oh, we have a well-versed listenership for Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Hey, I want you to go to the gym, and I actually have to go up to the studio. This has been phenomenal. Really, I've always enjoyed our friendship, and I enjoy your enthusiasm and candor. So thank you.
Tom, great to be with you, buddy.
Happy holidays.
You too, man. Hey, by the way, I should have saved this for the podcast, but so when people ask me, how'd you get the job? How'd you get the Red Zone job? I told them that I was already working for NFL media, but I was a roving reporter. That's when you and I got to know each other, right? They would send me to practices, send me to news conferences, send me to games, just like, you see probably Mike Giardi right now is Patriots beat and everything else like that. So back in the early days of NFL Network, it was me and there was like one or two other reporters. There wasn't a whole army of reporters. And this was like 2007, 2008, the elite Patriots teams. So I was in New England all the time. And I tell people that ask me about Red Zone, I was like, I'd be the guy in the press box who'd be watching the Jets and the Patriots live on the field at Gillette Stadium, but I'd have my laptop opened up and I'd be elbowing the people next to me, the reporters next to me saying, hey, yeah, the Jets and Patriots, but Adrian Peterson's got 100 yards at the half.
Exactly.
Tony Romo just hit Terrell Owens for the third touchdown of the game for the Cowboys. Like watching all the other games. I remember you were one of those guys. I know you sat next to me in press boxes, on me.
Yeah. Well, that's nice, Scott.
Yeah. I apologize if I ever distracted you, but that's the kind of the early workings of them, the NFL, knowing that I didn't like just one game. I wanted all the games.
It was fun. Yeah, that's nice. They're like 6-5. I don't care how things are going with Ken Wisenhunt and the Steelers.